welcome to Neutral Voices. I'm Dr. V, and this is In Depth, where we dig deep in the trenches of what matters. Tonight, we're talking about community resources and why they are necessary today.
Mm-hmm.
Are they necessary today? Are
Unfortunately,
you
yes.
taking advantage of the opportunities today? That's how I look at community resources.
In ways, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, in
Opportunities.
ways,
A lot of times people look at community resources as a crutch or something that's set aside for a particular group of
True.
people.
True.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I like community resources. One of the things I think is missing in our community right now, as we get ready to talk about it, I would say would be help for the elderly.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
sometimes when you see elderly people trying to get to
Yes.
and I just be thinking, we need to help them.
That's true.
You know, or what about with technology now?
Yeah.
You know, I think about that. I'm really concerned about that.
Yeah, I never
So-
viewed that, but yeah, they do need that because a lot of
and
things.
you, especially as I'm getting close to it.
Yeah, because as they were said from Brightpoint last night, a lot of their things are online now,
Mm-hmm.
and if they're not that technical savvy, you know, they could be missing out on some things that they could be benefiting from.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So with that, Jill, you want to say something?
No, I was just going to
Okay.
add quickly that I was actually thinking the other day with the housing market the way that it is, with people not being able to afford the cost and rent. And when we say someone is on a fixed income, obviously we're all on a fixed income, but the majority of us who are not elderly have the option to go and supplement.
Right.
So I was thinking with the housing market, you have a lot of people right now, even right here within a few miles of us, who are living in squalor because the places they are renting maybe doesn't have appliances or et cetera, but they have been there for 30 years, you know, so the
Yes.
elderly tolerate a lot more too, as far as like abuse or discrimination.
That's right.
Right.
That's
So
right. That's right.
You said that, so it triggered that. So just
That's
to throw
right.
it in.
So before we continue, let's talk from a historical perspective, because there was something so way back before we had community resources. I mean, what started it?
Well, there's always been some kind of community resource. If you go back, you know, I'm just going to go back to World War One.
Okay.
You know, they had, you know, that's when really the food stamps came out, and they had rations, they had bonds, they had things that would help people because the men were going off to war and they were leaving families here, and the families had to take care of them. But what we're looking at, like it was spoke last night that Ms. Brookshire spoke about, the community resources really became prevalent in the 60s and falling into the 70s because Lyndon Baines Johnson was the president at the time, and he had an initiative that was called the War on Poverty. And that set a lot of things in precedence that started, you know, focusing on the Medicaid, on the food stamps in a greater sense. Head Start started under that. So these were the community's resources that started historically under that.
So would you say he initiated
Well,
a
no.
lot of those resources, or?
He brought them more prominent.
Okay.
Let's say that he made them more prominent because, you know, he was looking at, you know, how can you reduce poverty in the United States? You know, we'll get into this later, but it was like give people more stuff or more resources, and that'll bring poverty down. But, you know, as we see today, we're still in that same boat looking for some of those same
Yeah.
outs.
Right. So when you
yeah.
say war on poverty, so I
Right.
just want to kind of break that down. Why that term? Why was it considered
I
a
guess
war
they wanted to
on
attack
poverty?
it, you know, in a sense like the war on drugs. They thought that they were going to fight it to, you know, eliminate
eliminate
it.
it.
So
Yeah.
that's what I was going to
It
say.
they didn't eliminate it.
So we're in a war.
We're still fighting that
against
same-
poverty. Somebody's playing on that side,
Correct.
too. But
Correct.
so it don't seem like we're winning.
It doesn't
No,
seem
We're
like-
not doing
we're
too
not
good right
winning.
now.
We're not winning.
Okay.
And you have to look at it from the standpoint of if you look at any war that the United States has been in, they stay for years upon years. So it's the same thing. They use the same type of strategy on the war on poverty and the war on drugs. So we still fighting that same war. If we fighting a war and there's no solution to it, then what's the point of fighting it?
So, Jill, with all of that being said, and we have done all these things to try to win this war and to alleviate all of these different challenges that we have been facing, what do you think is going wrong? What do we need to do to make some changes happen?
So, I mean, putting things into place, I think is, you know, not a bad idea, but with the mindset of we are going to address the root of where this is coming from, because you can have umpteen million resources, but the issue is it's also a focus on prevention. You know, how did we get here? Instead of, okay, when you fall victim to poverty because of XYZ, this is where you go. Instead of, why are you falling victim? What is XYZ? So I want to start out by saying that. And second, I want to start out with some statistics.
Okay.
So in the late 1950s, the overall poverty rate in the U.S. was approximately 22%. In 1960, which is kind of the era that you were talking about, because I believe that that was in the early 1960s,
Yes.
there was a I'm sorry, let me go back here. I got a little ahead of myself. Hold on here.
It's okay.
So first I want to address the huge fall in the poverty rate. So that's where I was going there. Throughout the 1960s, after some of these resources and programs were put into place, if you're looking at the statistics, because that brought in 1964 Medicare, Medicaid, some other programs that were listed. At that point, the poverty rate was 19%. So obviously it did drop a little bit because of those resources. But
Well,
go
ahead. Go ahead, because I got something to go with that.
Okay,
so finish your
perfect.
point.
So going a little bit further, and these numbers are actually from the Pew Research from the census, so I will put that out there. These programs, like I said, are put there for, a reason, for a resource. But when I was looking at the statistics, when you ask what the barriers or what the challenges are, generational wealth, which we're going to get to, in this case, everything points back to that as far as why the poverty rate, if we're talking African American, if we're talking about black people per se. And obviously that's not something that was addressed in the 1960s when these programs were put into place. So just to put it in perspective, Forbes, for example, there was an article on generational wealth. What do you think the number one, I'm going to call it, situation that creates generational wealth was?
Slavery.
Well, I mean, as far as like home ownership was the number one. What could black people not own back in the times? And not just that, but today.
Yeah.
There's still 20% more black than white being denied for home loans. 51% of all black people who go and apply for a home improvement loan are denied. So if you trace that all the way back to home ownership, and that's generational wealth.
Correct.
Not just that, but if your father leaves you a bunch of land and he passes away, you're good to go. You leave that land, it goes on. But let's say your father was living below the poverty line. There was nothing to hand to you. So not only when you become an adult do you not have anything inherited, but now you're more than likely taking care of your parents financially as
Sure.
well.
Sure.
So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of numbers, a lot of statistics, but the point is,
Right.
poverty-wise, we're not in a much better space than we were then. But if you look at the stats, I mean, it says that we are.
Okay.
And
Clarence.
yeah, I only wanted to go into that because, and he said the war, they stay in the war for a long time, but then there's a condition or a masking of actual things that would change the fact of, what poverty is. Now, you got to look at what happened in the 60s. There was a revolution of welfare. I mean, a re-revolution of welfare going into the 60s and the 70s. And so you had the Medicare, you had the Medicaid, you had all of these give me programs. That's when, and I know we talk about this a lot of times, that's when the free cheese and the free food and the free peanut butter. You remember they were giving these foods? So when they were giving them out, so people weren't, per se spending more. So it seemed like that the money was staying within the households, was staying in the community, but you were giving more, which set us up for where we are a lot today. That's one of the barriers. When you when you condition people to sit and wait
Right.
and not go and get,
Okay.
that changes
So-
the focus and that changes the operation and that changes the mindset.
Right.
Okay, now
Right.
so now you're going down the street that I want to go down. So I love everything that Jill shared. And I don't want to put poverty on a culture, a race,
Right.
or a people, but I want to look at it on a
broad.
Broad,
yes,
yes.
broad, a very, very large scale.
Right.
So when we talk about a war on poverty, let's look at it as the crisis, the government, the different things that was going on that continue to
Right.
cause this to
Right.
be a factor. But so with that being said, and moving forward, history that made a big difference, that mattered, that's always going to matter.
Correct.
It was what it was at that time, but let's move into right now and even in the future.
Right.
So looking at things, can we be real and look at what we do on a normal, everyday basis or what we don't do? And talk about why are we, and this is what I was talking about, why are we in poverty? Why do we deal with it? Why do some of your cousins do some of the things they do that cause them to continue to live a life of poverty? And I can put myself in that position and say, okay, maybe I haven't hit rock bottom, but sometimes you look at some of the things you do and you say, if I continue to do what I'm doing, I could easily find myself in a bad place.
Correct, correct.
And we even talked about last night about some of the people that do need housing assistance. How did they get in that position? So when I'm asking a question as far as we're in a war, the battle is real.
Right.
We armored up. We all know, Christians, we armored up. We ready for this battle.
Right.
But what is it that we still continue to do that keep us in a poverty state? And you said mindset.
Yeah.
So with that thought, can we take it from
Yeah,
there?
and I can go with that. First of all, let's look at poverty because, and I've heard this and I've been trying to find it, but I heard recently that poverty is $1 billion a year business.
Correct.
Business. Poverty is a business?
Yeah.
How? It is. Think about it.
Okay, that's a can of worms. So make sure you
I got a can of worms, but think
Okay.
about it.
you got a
I
can
got
of.
it.
I want you to open that up and then
let's just go. Let's just
Okay.
go with one area, and then we
Okay,
can move on.
okay.
Let's go with the criminal justice system.
Okay.
That keeps a lot of us down and keeps us impoverished. So I get arrested for DUI, hypothetically DUI, several DUIs, or shoplifting, something simple. You think it's simple. I can go do my 30 days. I'm good. But you got to think about it. They put me on probation. When I get on probation, what do I have to do? I have to pay fees.
You have to pay for everything.
I got to pay fees. I got to pay for a lawyer. I got to pay for. If I miss my probation fees, they're going to relock me up. It's a cycle that they go for the lower income, the more impoverished. Think about it. It's more tickets given on our side of town than anywhere else. I got stopped the other day, but I just got pulled over because my license plate light was out. I mean, how important is that? It's important, but I'm just thinking. So it was this thing, and then he said, "I'm not going to give," because I was like, "Man, I'm in my car and I don't look at the back of my car at night." But he was like, "Okay, so I won't give you a citation, but next time you can." So I'm thinking, how important? But these are the things that Then you got like childcare. I got to work in childcare. Then it's these things. So it's a business because think about all the things that we that are not in the upper echelon have to pay for.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
and you
yeah.
said it keeps causing us to fall short, and then we end up in
Yes.
poverty or etc. And can we still connect that to mindset?
Yes,
I mean,
we can connect that to and I was going to go with the mindset. The mindset, one of the things is because we indulge in too many things that are not beneficial for us.
okay, boom.
That's why
I wanted you to go
Well, see,
there.
Hey, Clarence, here's the other part about your mindset, and you wanting to move past the past.
I do, because
But you
that's where I
can't.
was going.
You can't.
Well, no, not from that. I'm saying because we only have so much time to
Okay,
cover
well,
all of what I
okay,
need to.
I
And
understand.
yes, you can go visit there, but yeah, come on back.
You said you want to move past the past. We
Mm-hmm.
can't move past the past because of the simple fact the poverty started in the past.
Of course.
So we, like she said, we got to start at the root. That's how we get past poverty. You got to look at the Great Depression. We never came out of the Great Depression, even coming into the 60s and 70s. And that's one of the reasons they had all the Lyndon Johnson came up with the war
on poverty.
on poverty. We still in the Great Depression, and it's just mask, and it's masked heavily because of the simple fact, like Clarence said, it's the little knick-knack things. One of the biggest things is can't get a house. I have to rent a house because I can have a 740 credit score, but they're gonna say, well, you had this in the past, so they hold our past against us, so we can't move forward.
Okay, so I said the word blame, and so you just kind of opened this up for me to talk about this. So you're saying that, but okay, so that's an isolated situation.
No, it's not
And
an
I'm saying-
isolated situation. It is not an isolated
I
situation.
get it, but for
It's
sake
real-
of this conversation
it's
tonight,
real conversation.
for sake of us staying in the flow, and
Okay.
so we can get through this and help the community. What I'm saying is, when I say that, I'm saying there's a group of people that would definitely agree and say yes, because maybe they feel like that, and maybe they are looking at their credit score and saying, I got a good credit score, but I'm still not getting ahead. But I challenge those people, even yourself, thinking wise, to say, okay, what is it that I am doing or I am not doing, or what is it that I continue to do that may even be causing a problem or causing me to be in need of some of the community resources. So that's going to lead me into where I want to go, because I know our time is going to run out, but I want to get into the home a little deeper and look at some of the generational trainings and mindsets, because we talked about it, that may be causing us to continue to rely on community resources. So that's the only reason
Well, if
I'm
you would have let
pointing
me
that out.
finish, if you would have really let me finish my
Well-
whole point, instead of cutting me off because you want to go to somewhere else. But the one of the biggest part of also is the removal of the man out the household, and it's not just blacks;
Right.
it's across the board.
Absolutely.
So if we keep running to these resources that say, okay, hey Jill, you can't have a man in your house. I mean, one of the biggest things, and I looked it up, the disparity is, if you look at the 2-parent household and you look at the 1-parent household, and it's so crazy where the 2-parent black and brown household makes half of a single white
One.
person.
Yep. I saw.
And
Yes,
so
I saw that.
that's a big gap right there.
Right.
That could
and
be.
then that's a big gap. So if I'm removed from out the household and I'm not being stable because you got to go to some of these resources, how's that helping anybody? Not just blacks, not just whites,
Yeah.
anybody.
Right, and let's be clear. We're not talking anything about black or white.
We're talking
talking clearly about. So let me just remind everyone, we're talking about community resources.
Right,
right.
So I want us to focus on what we're actually talking about.
Right.
And so with that, and Clarence, I'll let you talk. So, as far as the poverty, whether it's, history or whatever, I do want us to be clear about how we can help our people. And we want to educate them about the community resources in even our city. So
when you-
let's continue to move forward so we can get there.
But
Clarence,
you asked a
wanted to
question
say
of blame,
something.
and you asked about a
Yes.
culture of understanding, and it's unfortunate. And I spoke earlier that when they started giving, they set a condition or a mindset or a thought that, okay, you have a grandmother on welfare, then you have a mother on welfare, now you got a grandchild or a daughter or a son that's on welfare. It's a trickle down, and they're never taught how to navigate away from these community resources. And he was saying, and he did make a point, we're taught to gravitate or be anchored in. When you can't afford food, you go to get food stamps. You can't get your rent, you go get on Section 8. You're already trained, and there are people that they're generationally teaching their kids. Well, you have a baby, you get on Section 8. You go
Yes.
do this, you go do that. So it's a mindset that has been planted and has been cultivated that now they're there, so we might as well use them because
Correct.
they're there. So that is one of the things, and we have to take ownership of that. We're not trying to gravitate away from them. We're running towards them, and the more we run towards them, that's why they're still needed. Is because we won't let them go. And and we don't change our mindset to think that maybe I could try to do something. Maybe I can make a work an extra job. I know these things are outrageous in price and things, the prices of everything today. But if you can find a way to become self-sufficient if you really want it to.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. When I say community resources, I'm just not talking about a helping hand from that perspective. I'm thinking about the things that you can do to help yourself. True. So let's just, real clear, and then I'm going to go to Jill. The YWCA is a community resource.
Correct.
So different shelters or, an agency that provide education and training is a community resource.
Right.
A lot of our nonprofit organizations are community resources.
Yes.
So I want to make sure we're not just thinking of welfare and food stamps, etc. and housing. There's so many other community resources is where I'm trying to get us to broaden our conversation for sake of our community and educating for this hour. So.
Financial literacy too is something that not just our community but all communities lack.
There you go.
And when you talked about resources, we all were at the ONV Brightpoint classes. So that taught things that some people thought, this is so simple in elementary, but those things that we think are simple and elementary are massive in terms of having that resource in our community.
Yes.
So ONV and we try to be that resource. And the issue is, though, when you think of resource, I think of a reference point. So something you refer back to, not something that and I'm going back to the 1960s or the program still in place. If your car breaks down, V, today, your first thought, your mindset is going to be, okay, I need to take this money out of savings, and if it's not there, I need to go to the bank and get a loan, and if it's not there, I need to go to my dad. Like, that is your mindset. Mm-hmm. The problem is the savings, there is no savings account. Right. The self-reliance, the self-sufficiency has went out the window because we as a people rely on the government. The government's your daddy when your rent needs paid. The government's your daddy when they're telling you, if you get a job and better yourself, we're going to take away your rent money. So the government is your daddy. That's your everything.
That's right, and that's good. And Clarence, I'm going to let you go. But so when you say that, so that's what I'm talking about. So when I say mindset, let's say mind shift, because sometimes even your daddy may say, I cannot continue to enable you by giving you money every time. Because maybe there is something you're not doing that's causing you to be in this state. So from that perspective, we can't always rely on daddy.
That's true.
Okay.
And one of the things, as you spoke, one of the things the training, and you are correct, community resources. And I don't know if they still have it, but I think it was Job Corps. Job Corps gave disadvantaged people of all age, sex, color, that you can go to Job Corps and you can get a training. You can get a skilled training. And you can be, I know they had like culinary arts, they had, construction, they had mechanics. I don't know if they still do it, but there was a time.
Still have Job Corps.
Do they still have Job Corps? Mm-hmm. But you could go and you can learn a trade, and it was free. And that was a help up and not a handout. And, and what you were saying, too many times, and Jill hit on it, too many times we want a resource to be a handout and not a help up. Yeah. But there are those resources that you stated. They get educational trainings. They do different things that will be able to help you better yourself, to move yourself in a situation. Right. Instead of sitting, like you say, waiting for the handout, utilize the resources that can enlighten you as well, instead of just the ones that can take care of you. Yes. There's opportunities out there that you can move forward and you can change your mindset. You just got to want to get out there and do it.
Right. Now, so before we conclude, I do want E to touch on the wealth gap. So we keep hearing about the wealth gap from all angles. So E, speak to the wealth gap.
The wealth gap is, I just explained most of it, but the biggest thing about the wealth gap is the housing. It's the house. Mm-hmm. It's the 2-parent to 1-parent household. So one of the housing, put it like this, the 2-parent household do form the more substantial amount of money. So when you broke down to a one parent household and that parent got to work 2 or 3 jobs just to move forward and try to have a little something without changing their mindset because they are in survival mode. That's one of the biggest things about the wealth gap. It's survival mode. It's not no point that this person's not working, but they strictly in survival mode. Being in survival mode, what you gonna do? Do what you
Right,
gotta
but
do.
there's specific barriers.
Right.
So what other barriers? So outside of the father not being in a home or
Just one
a
of the
person
biggest
not having
barriers-
2 parents, etc.
One of the biggest barriers is single household, unable to get loans, health insurance, life insurance. It's just a generational wealth, understanding how to provide for a generational wealth. Like I said, if I'm renting a house and I've been renting the same house for 25 years versus I should have been paying that mortgage on that house, now I have nothing to leave my kids. I have nothing. I mean, it's to the point where we don't understand how the Rockefellers got their wealth.
Okay.
And if we was taught how they got their wealth at a young age and understand the fact that we all get a major insurance policy and put it in a trust and use that as our bank
Okay.
versus asking for somebody for a loan, the gap would be closed. And another big thing about our wealth gap is instead of turning our back on each other, we need to face each other and spend money with each other
Okay.
like other communities. And I mean, that's all the way across the board.
Right. So do you think we can? I would say, can we really play catch up? Can we close the gap if we look at why the gap started in the first place? So if we look at all of the free labor, et cetera, and all of the money that other people
There
make.
will never be.
It'll never
Okay.
close
We
that
can't
gap.
make
So-
up for 400 years.
That's what I was getting ready to say.
never
Do
bounce
we
back.
think it's possible to
No.
close the gap? And Clarence, you look like you wanted to say something about that, and then go to
and
Jill.
with that, with the wealth gap, and you hit on that. You know, it's always going to be there because that it was set
From
for
day one.
But now we can generate our own wealth. Where he was talking about that, it's not only we got to learn how to. And Jill hit on it. We got to learn how to spend money. We got to learn how to save money. We got to learn how to do these different things to be able to hold on to some of the resources that we have. That way, we don't need the outside resources. Again, but Eric is right. Land ownership, business ownership, things like that can generate. But we'd rather go spend more money
Buying
buying
clothes.
Nikes, buying Gucci, buying Louis Vuitton.
Back to mindset.
Back to mindset that we're not saving and you're not putting aside. So a lot of our reasons that we have to rely on, community resources, good or bad, is that we don't operate in a mode. Think about it. We got more liquor stores in our neighborhoods, lotteries. I mean, we spend money on a lot of frivolous
stuff.
things,
Fun stuff.
but it doesn't maintain us.
Yeah.
So
So that leads us to how do we close the gap? But how do we utilize our community resources, or how do we put ourselves in a position where we don't need them, but maybe we look at them more as an opportunity? Is there anything we can do?
First
with
of
that?
all, use them to understand them or to help yourself. Like Jill said and Miss Brookshire said, if you I said but at Brightpoint, they have financial literacy classes. They have other things to help.
Yeah.
Find out what in your community. Find out who helps you with job training. Find out who helps you. That way you can become self-sufficient. You can do these things. And you don't have to always use the handout
That's right.
community services. You can use the ones that can help you up. And I don't think we really tap into, as you can tell by our conversation, not many of us tap into the help up your community service. We just focus and look at the handout community service.
And that's what I'm saying, is we too busy looking at it from a negative perspective. And the library is an awesome community resource
Right.
that I take advantage of all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah.
And so, there's a lot of things, and I know we don't have time to get into that. I wanted to, Jill, you were going to add something.
So just from your question, when you asked what can we do, is there anything that we can do? I personally think that the Head Start was so massive, and that the same things that were going on then are still going on today. So I would say that it's impossible to fill it, but maybe with an exuberant amount of reparations to start, because the amount of the Head Start, I don't think is going to be fixed with any kind of policy change or anything like that. And as far as you're talking about the spending, so obviously consumerism, materialism, all of that does contribute to the wealth gap. But how do you explain the fact that if your income is coming up, how is the wealth gap getting? How do you explain that?
It's simple. As the income comes up, you're paying $4 for a gallon of milk.
Prices go up.
You're paying $2, $3 for a loaf of bread. And I'm glad you hit on that. A great way to be able to not have to rely on community resources as a handout is, let's look if the government regulated simple things. Simple things. Mm-hmm. Child care should not cost a family thousands and thousands of dollars a month, not a year.
Yes.
Right.
A month.
Child care.
Medication should not cost people thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a month, not a year. Mm-hmm. Food should not be as much as they get. They can regulate things that they want to regulate, but they're not regulated. And also, if they stop supporting everybody else but their own people,
Yes.
if they put more,
want, that's the
I mean,
key
you
word,
have to
if
look
they
at
want.
it. You have to look at it. They are regulating when they telling farmers don't grow so much crop. They are regulated when they telling other.
that's not regulating the prices.
No. They are regulating. They're regulating the prices because making prices go up. If all of us farmers, and they pay y'all not to farm and pay me to farm, and we all do the same thing, they regulating it because now the price is going up because there's a shortage now.
Yeah. But
And then, so when you look at that and you say, let's talk about the government, what can we do? So some other things would be, and I think, Jill, you even mentioned prevention or intervention. Mm-hmm. So when we think about mental health from that perspective, or them having access, the community having access to better health,
Right.
things along that line, parenting support. So when you mention child care, those prices are outrageous. But what about even youth development?
Yeah.
And so that's why, when I said we have to look at our community resources as opportunities.
Right.
So let's speak to this as we get ready to exit. In Fort Wayne, what are some of our awesome community resources that we need to take advantage of that's in our community?
there's a lot, and as Ms. Brookshire, if you have a child between the ages of, I think she said, juniors and senior high school, they can get in these programs called JAG. They teach them job training. They teach them savings. They teach them a whole lot.
Yes.
Get your children in these things. She said she wished she started them earlier, like the 8th grade. Push for them to start.
Yes.
Well, they got junior achievement starting in the 8th grade, in
Junior
middle
achievement.
school.
JA, that's one of them.
BizTown, yeah.
Yes.
So
But see, here's
Boys
the
and Girls Club,
here's the
that's
other
a
part
community
here's the other
resource.
part of that of our children not having that. A lot of kids don't have the resource, well, not the resources, but the parents to push them into that. That's key right there. You gotta push your child to be, hey, you need to join JA. But then again, the parents don't know anything about JA because guess what? 9 times out of 10, they working their butt off. They barely see their kids. So you have to understand the kid. We have to, as parents, have to push our child in a direction and don't give them options.
Yeah, because how's Johnny going to sign up if he's 8 if his parents aren't the ones
Yeah,
pushing him to sign up?
we got to stop
That's
giving our
right.
kids options and say, this is what you're going to do.
This is
hands
what you
down.
need to do. And that leads me to a couple more, because I would like to acknowledge even the Voices of Unity. Great place to enroll your child.
Yeah.
That's another organization, the Jennings Centers. They were just fighting to keep that.
They just
The art
reopened that. They
leadership.
just
That's
reopened
right,
that. Yeah.
art leadership. So those places, and that's what I'm saying, we shouldn't have a difficult time trying to call these things out. They should be like boom, 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 right?
Yeah.
But we don't. A lot of times because we're so familiar, when you say community resources, the first thing we're thinking about
About the
is
handout.
yes. And so, but that's not that's not what our focus is.
That's not
And so
what-
that's the reason why we have to have panels like this and
Right.
discussions like this, so that we can understand and be educated that there's a lot of community resources available in our community, in all communities.
Yes.
And so, from a financial, educational perspective, young people, single people, it doesn't matter. There's community resources out there available for you. Parks and Recreation
Yeah.
has
Big brothers,
tons.
big sisters.
Yes, big brothers, big sisters. So, listen, we need to actually put a list up there so you can see them and take advantage of them. But I will say one of the places you can begin is with Bright Point, since they were our guests here last
Yes.
night. Awesome connections, financial, starting up your business. What's the other one for starting up? The Seed program, who offers classes. I'll say even the Career Academy, Fort Wayne Community School Career Academy downtown, the former Anthus building.
Dream Center, is that the
The
new one?
Dream
also?
Center.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so there's tons that we can take advantage of. And so with that being said, anybody have any other major points we want to leave our people with?
Greatest one you can take advantage of is
The
one of our
greatest.
Mutual Voices.
The great plug. Okay.
You gonna do it?
I'll let you do it.
Yeah. And what he said was one of the greatest, and this is one that is coming to formation and is coming out right now. It's called Our Neutral Voices. The formation, it's a grassroots organization that was put together by people of the community for the community. We have pillars, spirituality, financial, mental and physical health, the arts and education, and our sports. And we're forming that, and that's going to be a resource right here in the community. We're doing some things right now to get the groundwork set. So many things are happening. We're not going to reveal them all, but if you watch, we have some things in order, things going that's coming about within the next year that is going to change the community and the outset of the community resources and the thought of community resources.
Yes, and I'm happy and excited to be a part of it. And so I look forward to that. All right, thank you. And so thank you for hanging out with us. This is Neutral Voices, and as we always say, E?
Always protect your mind.